anywhere or everywhere. Stores, even us, we want to do, right? So, I mean, as developers of the food, for example, the airports doesn't work, something like this. But in other years, they are doing like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, Breaking Code. It was the name, right? So Breaking Code. I don't remember what was the topic of Game of Thrones. Okay, but well, so in terms of 2018 already, so we are talking about Kotlin, and Kotlin offers the possibility to do some development in native way. That means that we are targeting the compiler LLVM. We are not targeting the Java virtual machine or on a virtual machine. So that means that we can do something in these platforms. And that's very interesting, right? Because say that you can write something and it's available in a macOS, so that's something that is cool. Sadly, Kotlin native is in currently development, right? So it's not ready. But you have different examples, you have different repositories from JetBrains, from people from articles, where people show how you can write an app with Kotlin native for iOS and for Android. And this week, the people from JetBrains has released a Kotlin native plugin for app code. The app code is the ID from JetBrains to the iOS world, and it was released 3 days ago. So something is there, right? So I don't know when it's going to be ready. I don't know when it's going to be productive, but that's something that imagine. So the people from JetBrains is putting a lot of efforts in the language. So keep an eye on Kotlin native, but it's not the moment. So what about Kotlin today? So in terms of Android, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because, well, the community has embraced the language very well. So everybody loves Kotlin. I don't know a single Android developer that now told me that prefers to develop in Java. So no one. Today, we have later a presentation about Kotlin too. So this talk is not going to be about the fundamentals of the language, and I'm not going to spend a lot. So if you are an Android developer, you know that it's there. In terms of web, we have Kotlin JS, that the Kotlin compiler is trying to translate the Kotlin code in JavaScript. So I'm not very familiar with the Kotlin JS in that case, but could be a good example if you are trying to do something with web, right, and you want to generate a JS or HTML code. One use case that for me is something closer, right, is the Firebase functions, right? So instead of the Firebase functions, you can write in TypeScript or JavaScript. So in that case, you can try to develop this thing in Kotlin and generate the JavaScript and use the Firebase functions since Kotlin. And then there are a lot of articles trying to run this in a Docker instance, and it's quite interesting. So, in terms of server, so the initial point here is Kotlin is JVM. So that means that runs in the Java virtual machine. So apparently, we can run Kotlin everywhere too, right? But Kotlin is the new guy in the hood, right? So we cannot compete with maybe with Scala or with Java in terms of backend. But that's something that is there, right? And maybe we have to explore. In terms of frameworks, with Kotlin, we have a Spring, right? A Spring Boot in the version, I think, 5. It's able to use Kotlin. So that's a big step because Spring is one of the most used frameworks. Ktor is one framework from JetBrains. So it's, well, people talk very well about Ktor, and I have seen some examples, and it's worth it. And finally, Bird.x that belongs to Eclipse, and it's quite interesting. One friend recommended me this framework, and you can develop in a reactive way with Kotlin, the part of the server. Not only in Kotlin, you have extensions for everything. And in terms of deployment, so once we have our framework written in Kotlin, what we can do, so we can deploy in Heroku, of course, Amazon Web Service, and Google Cloud. And it's here where it's going to be this talk about how to deploy with Kotlin in Google Cloud. Okay, Google Cloud is the platform that comes from Google, right, that's trying to put together all the products. We have a lot of products that we are using daily, right? That's maybe that one thing that now looks like we are thinking only in Firebase, coming from Google, right? But Google Cloud is there, right? So since the hosting, the storage, big data, and service that we are using, like Translate API, right? The prediction. So it's a whole suite of products. In terms of one part, App Engine, that we are going to talk later, so which language we can use. So years ago, yesterday we were talking with Christian about this. I remember 4 or 5 years ago when Firebase it was not there, and you want to validate your MVP, you wanted to do something fast, the mobile developers, we were using App Engine. And at that moment, it was only available Java and Python. But now we have JS, we have Ruby, we have Go, .NET, Java, Python, and PHP. And it's here in the Java part where if you can deploy in Java, you can deploy in Kotlin. That's the point, right? And I don't know why still Google is not trying to promote this thing, right? Because from the perspective of developer, it's the same. Okay, so let's do a simple example in that case. Imagine that now we want to try to build an app first, the client, because we are Android developers. And this website is very popular in Thailand. That's called BX. It's for Bitcoins, right? So I mean, that's something that is very popular. And you know, it offers an API. And the thing that we want to do is only to build an app in Kotlin, of course. That's trying to get the rates or the prices from the website. So in terms of architecture or whatever you want to name, so the thing that we want to do is very clear, right? So we have the client. We don't want to discuss about which presentation pattern we want to apply, but we have one domain and one repository that is going to abstract the source of data. If we are going to the details of the implementation of this approach, we can think that in terms of local storage, we're going to work with SQLite, that's come from Google, from the Android, and we're going to use the abstraction of room, right, from the architecture components. Then the network stack, we're going to use retrofit. In terms of the domain, I'm a huge fan of domain-driven design, so you can read the book of Eric Evans with the same name, and the domain is the center of your app. So you are building the software first with the domain, so the use case. If I'm working in a bank, my use case is get accounts. If I'm working in an airline company, get flights, whatever. That's the center of the software, right? Then will come the details of the implementation, right? So in that case, I have to find 2 use cases, get traits and sync, right? Because I want to synchronize with the API. Later we are going to check. And to trigger the synchronization, we are going to use the job scheduler, right? You can use, I don't know, Firebase, job dispatcher, whatever. So, but that's something that is based on the job scheduler too. In some countries, like for example in China, we don't have, and we can use one approach from Evernote. I don't remember the name, but because with Firebase, in that case, it's not available. And if you are working with versions previous of 5. something, you have to use GCM for do this synchronization. Okay. And later, so once we have the app, the idea, right, in the network stack is connect with this. But suddenly our app is a little bit famous, and it becomes more people, right? So to using the app. So BX is an external company, and we don't know anything, right? So I don't know if they feel confident to offer the API or to load his network, right? So that's possible that sometimes we want to. Well, we can have some problems of connectivity, and our users is going to get angry, right? So in that case, in our idea of our application, we want to offer a third part. In that case, that is going to be a server, right? We are going to build an API and below the VX, and to our users, we are going to offer the connectivity of the network layer through retrofit is going to be our server, no VX, right? And if we are talking about implementations, we are going to use Google Cloud, and we are going to use Kotlin. So far, so good, right? So what we need. So Google Cloud is a whole suite of products, right? It's not only one thing. I don't know if you remember Firebase Test Lab, for example. So it's a product to execute the automation testing with Espresso with the own framework called Robot. So you have to use gCloud, so the SDK. So not only you are working with App Engine, you are not only working with App Engine, Google Predictions, Firebase Test Lab. So this SDK is for everything. So the first thing that we have to do is get this software. Then we have to download an additional package for use the app engine in Java. We need the Android Studio or IntelliJ, no Eclipse, right? Because in our times we were working with Eclipse with the app engine, right? And it was a little bit tedious. And finally, the app engine Gradle plugin. That's something that is very convenient, right? Because at the end, you want to deploy a server, you want to start a server, you want to debug a server, and this plugin is giving us a Gradle task to do the things, but without any problem. Okay, so that means that I can do something with Google Cloud App Engine with these 4 elements. Only I need this. Okay, let's see a demo. So, okay, first of all, this is the Gradle configuration file. And as you can see, so I only have 2 dependencies, right? One is Kotlin and another is Endpoints, because we are going to spend later was this. And then I applying for plugins, right? One with the dependencies to abstract the verbosity of the dependencies, Kotlin. Word, that's something specific for the server to deploy the version, and App Engine plugin specific. So only with these 4 things, with these 4 plugins and 1 dependency, actually, I'm able to write to run this thing. Okay, so it's very small, I know, but I only have 3 files in this project: Hello World Service and Hello World Endpoint, right? Let's check the code. So in case of the Hello World droidcon endpoint, so as we want to offer an API, we are using the cloud endpoints. And it's quite convenient because you can define a REST API scheme in a very easy way, right? So I have, first of all, that the name of my API is called droidcon. The version is V1 because you can version different things. And then I have my endpoint that is called sync, and it's going to get a pattern that is placed, right? And then I'm calling to the service that is not very well here. Okay, that is going to write something. If I go to the write something, it's only a function that is returning object hello with a string, right? With the string templates. And the object hello, it has a lot of complexity, and it's only a data class with a place string. So 3 classes, and then I have to tell as well about the configuration files, right? So because you want to deploy in the cloud, you have to specify some configuration. Actually, if you're working with Python, or actually I think that you can try to work with YAMLs directly and try to forget the XML. And here you are indicating the name, the version. And finally, as well, you have to say that when you receive a request from one endpoint, you want to redirect to your final endpoint, right? So that's why we have the servlet mapping, and we have here specifying where is our service in that case. 2 small files of configuration, 3 Kotlin classes, and then we are able to try to run. Okay, so the font is okay. Okay, well. And if I want to run locally, I only have to do app engine run. Okay, and this is going to deploy locally in an instance my application in the server. So now it's throwing this because it's showing Java, right? So we are trying to start a service in Java. Okay, so it's running. So let's test the thing. Well, first of all, I have to say, to be fair, right, so that actually you have a local an administration, a local administration, when you are trying to deploy something with App Engine in your machine. It's a very reduced version because on the real deployment you have a lot of options. But here, if you want to check I don't know, the entities, the task queues, modules, more features that is offered in App Engine, you can see the results here. Okay, so we have the local host, and I'm going to, well, so I mean that Kotlin version 1, and it was Word, right? I don't know if it was Word. Do I? No? What's the name of the endpoint? droidcon v1 place. Yeah. Not Kotlin, droidcon. Okay, so I have this, and actually, that's the thing. So the endpoint is returning the object, right? So in an API, right? So I have said that I want to return a hello class, and the content is the content of the class placed in a JSON format. So it's able to consume from the client perspective. The same if I'm saying here, so whatever. Okay. So 3 classes, and I can offer this endpoint to all my clients, right? So simple. That's why. So I mean, the thing that I want to emphasize again, that's something that is not, you have to set up 1,000 things, you have to do, no, simple. 3 classes, and you can offer this thing. Okay, and of course, if you are trying to deploy, because we want to deploy to the server or to the cloud, so we have this is the Google Cloud Platform, where we can manage a lot of things, but one of the things is our endpoint. So to do that, we have to create, first of all, a project in Google Cloud. We have to log in locally, authenticate, because we want to give permissions to Google to upload the application, set the project ID, and finally run with the Gradle plugin App Engine deploy. And we are going to have the website available in internet. Okay? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Google Cloud, right? So first, App Engine is one of the oldest products from Google. I think that it was released in 2009. So imagine, right? So it's one of the most successful products, even that now it's not very, very promoted. And it's like a web framework and cloud compute platform where you can host and develop applications, web applications. And it's based in instance or containers, right? Because the good thing here is like Google is taking care about the scalability of your app, right? So Pokemon Go, actually, it was backed to Google App Engine, right? And that's something that if we are trying to do by yourself, it's quite hard, right? Because if you have a peak of, I don't know, 3-4 million requests by second, so Google App Engine is trying to escalate for you the instance. And what is this instance? A single instance or container, it's something that is your code, of course. It's the runtime environment. Before, we have seen that you can develop in Java, you can develop in Python. So App Engine is given this runtime of the language. Contains the Google App Engine APIs, and additionally, some memory. So when you have a peak, so Google is able to escalate and create another instance. So far, so good, right? At the same time, when the calls are going down, so it's going to roll back this creation of the instance. Of course, the business model is more consumption, more money, right? But again, so now, whoa, that's something normal, right? Okay, and then I want to stop in Google Cloud Endpoints, because endpoints, that's the thing that I was showing before, that we were able to offer an API, right? Google is giving us tools and libraries to build these things in an easy way. We don't have to spend so much time. So once we have our backend, we can define these Google Cloud Endpoints, and not only Android, so everybody can get the benefit of this endpoint, right? And the other thing that I want to stop is the data store, and it's the NoSQL database from Google, right? This has a lot of time to existing. And it's funny because now Firebase has 5 stores, the name. And it's not the same, but it's very well, it's based on data store, but they are trying to build the product on the top of data store, right? So, and that's something that we are going to use for the persistence. Okay, so the big picture in that case that I want to show is like I'm going to change this consumption directly from VX from the API, and I want to offer an endpoints. I want to give the app engine as backend, and then as storage, I want to offer in data store. Okay, so how is going to be the server from the perspective of Kotlin or the development, right? Again, we are going to follow the same picture, right? So server, okay, the domain, and then a repository that is going to abstract the source of the data. If we enter in details, we have that for the local storage, we are going to use data store, as we saw before, the persistent solution from Google. On top of data store, we are going to use Objectify, that is a library trying to do easy the access to the data store. It's funny, right? Because it was an external company, external people doing this project, and actually it's from Google. So it's like Dagger, right? So one product that is very good that everybody uses, and now Google includes him in his stack. On remote, for the communication, we are going to use retrofit. So we start to speak in the same language. So that means that I'm going to bring some concepts from Android to the server. In terms of domain layer, we're going to use the two same use cases, get traits and synchronize. Synchronize, why? Because we want to synchronize with VX all the time to offer to our customers the data. To synchronize, we're going, Google Cloud or Google App Engine is offering one service that is called cron. It's like in Linux, more or less, so the same. We can try to say that every 2 minutes, we want to get the data from VX. And finally, we are going to offer to our clients through Google Cloud Endpoints, everything. So this is the implementation that we are going to apply to the server. Okay, and once it's there, so what problems I have found with this? First of all, it's retrofit. So if you are trying to use retrofit with an external with external API, so the first thing that you are going to have is a proxy selector problem. That's something normal because Google is trying to block that you are doing you are trying to do some bad behavior inside the API, right? But you can solve because it was very known. This is from 2015, and using retrofit in 1.9 it was working, but not in 2. So, but at the end, they offer the possibility to open the call factory, so you can try to extend the call factory using the call wrapper, and then in your definition of the retrofit, you can include the call factory wrapper, and it's working. Another problem that I have found is with cron, because I was using an endpoint, and the thing that I want to do is all the time trying to push the endpoint. And in the Chrome website from Google, it's saying that you want to, you cannot specify a Google Cloud endpoint in the URL. So the solution in that case, it was trying to wrap the petition in another call, right? And so far so good. We can still using this. And with Kotlin, no problem. So everything was there. Everything was okay working. So the thing that maybe I was more worried about thinking that, so maybe Kotlin something is not going to work, everything was working well. So if there is one thing that is common between the implementation of Kotlin and the implementation of the client and the server is the picture, right? The picture that we are doing, right? We have a domain. We have implemented in the same way. In the client, we have a domain that gets in the traits and synchronized. The same for the server, and we have the same behavior with the repository. That's a good thing to have a clean architecture or a separated responsibility architecture with that. So why not try to create an additional module and try to abstract or trying to share the common behavior? So imagine that, for example, I'm creating this core, and this is only the beginning, right? We are going to see one example that is implementing a use case, the interface, right? But we have to think further, because in this case, we can define the domain entities in the core module, right? So, and we don't have to implement in our client, in our server. This morning, we have heard that one problem with one change at the last time with one entity, with one model in the API, right? So here, everything is driven by the core. So we have the same entities between the both elements. The use cases too, right? You can try to write an abstraction, and at the end, if I'm using room or I'm using data store, it's an implementation detail, but I'm saving, so that's the use case. The modules, the same with Dagger. That's something that I want to explore because maybe even, well, everything, the client and the server part are working with Dagger. So no problem. Everything that we were working with Android, it's working with in the server. So maybe we can try to design something to apply the injection in an abstract way and trying to only provide the dependencies defined in the client. And the dependencies, of course, once we are using retrofit from in the client and the server, in terms of compilation, in terms of build time, if we are defining in a core, for example, in like implementation way, it's going to be faster. Okay, let's see an example with get traits, right? So hello world. Okay, well, as you can imagine, so this is not so simple. Like the last example here, we have three main modules. Okay, we have server, app, and core. And well, let's start if you want with core actually. Okay, well, core in that case is a Java library that is used in Kotlin, right? And it's very small because I only implementing the entities of the application. So again, the entities are not defined in the customer, on the client and the server. The entities are defined in the core. So these entities will be the same for both clients. So and trait in that case, and traits is another case. And the use cases of the app so are defined in the core too. So we have like the get traits. It's something that we are speaking on the same language in the client and in the server. So when I refer that get traits, is going to be a trait that is an entity defined in the domain part of the core, and that's it. There is no much more. Okay, in terms of servers, well, here we are going to have more things. Well, in implementation, the endpoints, that's something that we have seen before. Then we have Dagger compile and Dagger. So Objectify to abstract the data store, and then the implementation of core. So we are porting the server. So it's not very complex, right? So the typical libraries that we are going to use to our code. So okay, so in terms of server, so first of all, if you want, we can check. For example, so we have the model. In that case, we are using the Dagger model, so the same technology that we are using in Android. And okay, so we are using the traits. We are providing the use case, but this use case comes from the domain layer. And as the domain, as the use case requires the abstractions of the repository, I can try to inject the difference, giving that locale for the data store, Objectify, and remote for retrofit. Remember that we are working with retrofit in both sides. The same for the next use case, and then the implementation details about how we get the data, right? Let's take, for example, the sync traits. Well, this interface, actually, as you can see, is implemented in core, right? Not in the client. But when we are trying to look for the implementation, we have the client and the server. So from two different points, we are using this. Okay, a server, and then, well, so I mean that so far so good, right? So we have, I don't know, that the code is important here. We have to implement, it's using two repositories, local and remote. And when we get from remote repository traits, we want to populate the database. Okay, nothing interesting here. Okay, and the same for the repositories, the same for the endpoints, and then we're going to check the endpoints. Okay, here, the API, don't worry about this is not a compilation problem, it's Dagger in our Android Studio. So we are injecting the endpoints that is going to be useful for our perspective. So for our clients, this is going to be the endpoints that they are going to be used by the Android part. Okay. And then I have to check another thing that in configuration from the server side. So first of all, as I said before, I wanted to generate a job every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, right? That is going to check the data from VX and is going to retrieve the data. And then the configuration now it's a little bit more bigger because we have different endpoints, but the same thing. We have to depend on endpoint servlet and then define the different endpoints. So I have 2 droidcon endpoint and I have the other cron service. And additionally, from the data store, I have to generate the object filter. Okay. So the theory says that I'm going to stop the previous example. I can run. Now actually I'm in the other example. So as you can see, that's the UI example. So, and I'm going to execute Gradle app engine run to deploy locally the instance of my server. Meanwhile, we're going to see the implementation of Android. That after 35 minutes, I'm going to talk about Android. But okay, the app, hello world, no. So it's quite similar, right? So if we start, okay, in terms of dependencies, well, actually, because it's the cloud or the server, in that case, the only purpose is to get data and then offer the data. Here we have the client, and that's why we have a lot of dependencies, right? With support. In that example, I was using coroutines. I don't know if you are using coroutines, but it's quite convenient, right? Instead of using all the huge dependency of RxJava, but you can use, or you can try coroutines that actually it's experimental, but you can use, it's not a problem. So same as I said before, so Dagger compiler, and then this with room compiler and the processor for the persistence, but I had some problems yesterday and this morning with the KAPT, so and room, that's something, but that's why here you have directly the version. With the plugins, right? Android extensions, KAPT, and Android. So hierarchy, same API, database, domain, home screen, job, present. Again, here is not the purpose of this talk, talking about the different MVP or presentations patterns, right? So the thing is like how we are going to get the data. So in that case, we have only getting the data, the coroutine from the Bitcoin. If we go to the get data, we can see actually to the presenter one of the properties is get trace. You can guess from where comes this get trace? Exactly, from the core. Not defined in the client, it's defined in core. So, and then, well, same. We can see as well implementation of the repository. Okay, in that case, it's the local repository, and the local repository is using only one parameter, that is the DB interface. That's one interface provided by Room 2, where you have to define the different access point to your app. And actually, so inserting in your database, and that's it. Finally, if we want to, from the local repository, get the traits, the entity as well comes from core. Okay, so I think that we can try to, first of all, check in the, well, we have running the app. Okay, we can run the app. Let's see how's going the demo. So apparently we have running now locally the server, right? And we are going to start the app, and we want to run from the app the access to the storage that we have defined in the server. So let me, yeah, is there? Install an APK. So the app is not there. Okay, export Dubai. Okay, so we're loading now, and let's see. So we have now data, right? So this data is not coming from BX. I forgot to show you the retrofit implementation. The API. So actually, sorry, the URL is my local host machine, right? So that means that when I started the app, so I tried to call the server to populate the information, and that's it. So the data is there. So this is coming from a third-party API that I have designed with maybe 2-3 hours, and I can retrieve information for external app. If we are going to the local data store, now we can see that we have we have this entity kind. A kind is a concept different from entity from the normal relational database. And if we can list, we can see the data that we are storing. So we don't have in that case the cron because it's not applied the cron in the local instance, and we can see whatever is happening. Okay, so the last thing that I want to show is that I want to deploy to the cloud. Okay. So I stop here. And to deploy, it's only with App Engine deploy, right? And let's see. Because again, in this task, Gradle and the plugin is trying to detect the change that you have done in your previous version, and it's going to deploy a new version in the Google App Engine. So it's going to be available for everybody. So I think that is not going to take a lot of time. Here has detecting only 3 chains. So if you are trying to deploy a new version with 100 files, it's going to take more time. But in that case, because I was testing before the demo was okay, it was only three cases. yeah, well, so the last time the demo was, I don't know, so. Okay. Well, meanwhile, this is loading. We can go to the Kotlin Google App Engine console, and I can show you how is the real console in the server, right? So my app is Kotlin client server, and here I can try to handle everything, right? Since the different versions that they have, the cloud storage, how it's working, and I can see how is the response in that case. So if I go on to the versions, remember that Google Cloud is trying to put different effort, because maybe you want to roll out the different stages, right? You only want to offer the API to 50%, like we are doing in Android. So far so good. Let's see if S is there. The build has successful, right? And here we have the URL. Remember that Google is adding the app spot in your theme, right? So if I think it's this endpoint, if I put here, let's check what happened. So if it's very slow, it's because I'm trying to retrieve everything from the database. And exactly, so I have the traits actually deployed on the Google App Engine. So final words about this. First of all, it's like this is with Kotlin, but I have to say that Google App Engine, it has another modality that is a flexible runtime, because this is using the standard. You are using the Java runtime, look, you are putting Kotlin inside. But with the flexible runtime, you can offer whatever you want. So imagine that you have a new language, and you can offer this as runtime language for your application. And you can Dockerize everything. And yeah, so what else? talking about, well, as Android developers, and we are very good in the platform, in the Android, but as you can see, it's very easy trying to put in the server. And you can try to do both things. And that means that if you are developing an API, so that's one thing less that you have to do, and you have a better communication. And so far, so good. So I mean that this is my personal email. If you have some questions, this is my Twitter. And yeah, I have an announcement too. Today, I have to say that I'm Google Developer Expert, not only in Android, in Kotlin too. So it was announced last week. So you're the first guy to know. And I'm working in Thailand and living in Thailand. So if you are coming there, holidays or conferences too, right? So yeah. So I will be happy. And if you are thinking to move to Thailand, let me know too. So any question, please, guys? Questions?
Anyone has a question?
Hi there. So Kotlin is now becoming the de facto future language of probably, I believe, on other platforms as well. In your day-to-day activities, do you use Kotlin? Is it something you use within a Google?
Yeah, actually, we are fully committed with Kotlin. It's very funny because we have one hook on GitHub that we don't allow to commit new Java files. If you have one Java file, we reject the pull request. So, yeah, that's the first day. All the people was freaking out, right? But so now we are very happy with this. Actually, and sorry for the spam, but we are adding some value to the community. We have developed one library called Cacao for automation testing. It's like trying to build a DSL and trying to abstract the internals of Espresso and your unit or your integration test. So if you can check the library, it's very good. And then, yeah, so we are 9 hours by day working with Kotlin. So everybody. Yeah.
More questions?
I have one question for them. Can I? How many Kotlin developers here in the room? Okay, that's nice. Nice.
Another question. So question is about Java and the Kotlin. Like, what do it feel like in a year or two? You know what's going on about the Google and maybe losing battle about Java. The loyalty, like personally, is like something a must. Like everyone needs to build Kotlin.
I remember years ago when Android Studio was released, in the same slides, they were saying that we are going to work with Eclipse always. Nobody works with Eclipse, right? So Java is there. Java has more than, well, actually 22 years. Everybody's working with Java. At the end, so it's a very mature language. I don't think that Google is going to say you don't work with Java, because even they are offering new features of the new Java 8 API versions too, right? Today, I don't think so, but who knows, right? So the people of JetBrains is pushing a lot with Google, so, but still, so I mean that. Are you a Java developer? Understand?
Yeah, I'm a Java developer, but I'm learning Kotlin.
Yeah, well, I recommend you to go to Kotlin, so because I don't know, it's different, right? So I mean that's something. But you are Java 8 or Java 6, Java 7?
I was Java 8, then
Okay.
we got the project, but
Well, if you were Java 8, that's okay, right? Still, right? But for me, it was very sad because I was talking with people in one bar, Swift developers, Java 8 developers, Scala developers, and you, Java 6, Java 7, Android, and it was, oh, poor guy. So he doesn't know what is a Lambda even, so what is a stream?
Kotlin is exactly like Java 10, something like that.
Java 10, oh my God. Yeah.
Hi, Iñaki. Thank you for the presentation. My question is that a few weeks ago we know that there was a problem between Oracle and Google, and then there was a rumor that Google is going to put Android to Dart. You know, that is a JavaScript competitive language, and Google owns it.
Yeah.
We were expecting Dart, but suddenly they announced Kotlin, and Kotlin is intelligent language. So
policy with Google always to trying to go to different ways at the same time. Sometimes I'm losing with what is the thing, right? Because I don't know, Dart is there, Flutter now is everywhere too. A lot of people is talking about these things. But I'm seeing that Google is putting a lot of efforts with Kotlin too, right? So the people of JetBrains are putting efforts with Google too. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't know because I think that will be a moment in the future that they will be the suites, right? But not now. So, and I don't see 1 year, 2 years that Google is going to do the suite in 1, 2 years.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Hi, my question is about Java 14. The question is, do you think we will not use Java anymore with Kotlin, or maybe we replace it?
Yeah, the current problem now actually is like coroutines is in a very experimental state, right? So even that, so you can use in production coroutines, but the comparison never is coroutines with RxJava. So it's the schedulers of RxJava with coroutines. So this is like the equivalent, right? In coroutines, we don't have the abstractions like the operators in RxJava they have, right? But I'm going to tell you something. In Agoda, we are working with RxJava 1. And we are not going to do the migration to Rx2 because we want to see what happens in the future with coroutines. But still, we need more abstractions on the top of the coroutines like the operators are doing in the schedulers for RxJava.